Last night's episode of The View erupted into a firestorm of raw, unfiltered truth that left jaws on the floor and social media ablaze. Ricky Gervais, the fearless British comedian known for torching Hollywood's sacred cows, didn't just spar with co-host Sunny Hostin. He dismantled her entire worldview in a confrontation so electric, it's already being called a cultural reckoning when Hostin branded comedy a tool of oppression and accused Gervais of cloaking bigotry and humor. He didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned and stared her down and demanded say that again. What followed wasn't just a defense of comedy. It was a surgical strike against performative righteousness, exposing the hypocrisy festering at the heart of The View's sanctimonious stage. This wasn't about promoting Gervais' new Netflix special. It was about revealing the ugly truth of how daytime TV weaponized victimhood. For clicks and clout, buckle up, because this 5,000-word deep dive into the chaos will leave you stunned, inspired, and maybe even laughing. To the record's attention was palpable from the moment Gervais stepped into ABC's New York studio that morning at 52. The comedian, whose razor-sharp wit has made him a global icon since the Ambush Brewing producers, visibly on edge, handed him a list of trigger warnings and off-limits topics: religion, politics, identity. Essentially a gag order on comedy itself. One insider later spilled that a makeup artist overheard Hostin rallying her team Venom in her voice. This transphobic piece of garbage needs to be exposed. I don't care if he's funny. The trap was set before Gervais even sat down. Hostin, a former federal prosecutor turned daytime TV moralizer, had planned to make an example of him, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. Gervais has built a career shredding the self-righteous, from Golden Globes roasts to his boundary-pushing specials. This wasn't going to be a debate. It was going to be a demolition. Backstage, the atmosphere was suffocating. The warm-up comedian, under strict orders to keep things safe and inclusive, delivered a painfully unfunny set about coffee and whether the kind of bland drivel that makes you question why comedy exists. Meanwhile, Gervais sat quietly scribbling notes with the precision of a surgeon preparing to cut. He wasn't just observing The View's hypocrisy. He was cataloging it, ready to unleash a reckoning. The show opened with its usual fare, panel of hosts pontificating about the day's outrages, with Hostin leading the charge. Her signature blend of legal jargon and moral superiority dominated the airwaves as she railed against comedians who profit from pain and the violence of words. Joy Behar, ever the loyal psychic, nodded along, nervously aware of Gervais' reputation for verbal carnage. Whoopi Goldberg, a comedian herself, stayed eerily neutral, her silence a tightrope walk between self-preservation and respect for her craft. Hostin, however, was on a mission, framing Gervais as a villain who needed to be canceled before he even opened his mouth. By the time Whoopi introduced him, "Please welcome Ricky Gervais." The studio was a powder keg. The audience's reaction was a mixed bag. Some clapped enthusiastically, fans was irreverent humor. Others sat stone-faced, arms crossed, ready to pounce. Gervais strolled out with his trademark swagger, casual but commanding like a lion stepping into a den of hyenas. He took his seat, deliberately scanning the hosts like a scientist studying a peculiar species. When his eyes locked on Hostin, he paused, a sly grin creeping across his face. Sunny Hostin, he began, voice dripping with mock curiosity. "I Googled you, former federal prosecutor turned daytime TV personality. That's quite a downgrade, isn't?" The audience gasped, a few chuckles breaking the tension. Hostin bristled, her smile tight. "I'm proud of my career evolution." She shot back, defensive but poised. "Evolution," Gervais quipped, leaning forward. "You went from prosecuting criminals to prosecuting comedians. That's not evolution, love. That's devolution." The studio erupted in laughter, but Hostin's eyes narrowed. The battle lines were drawn. Hostin wasted no time launching her attack. "Your comedy hurts people, Ricky," she declared, her voice heavy with rehearsed indignation. "You mock trans individuals, disabled people, religious communities." Gervais didn't blink. "Say that again," he demanded, his tone sharp but calm. "Say I mock trans individuals. Give me one specific example, one actual quote where I mock trans people rather than discuss the discourse around trans issues." Go on. The challenge hung in the air like a guillotine. Hostin fumbled with her note cards, her confidence wavering. "Well, your entire special," she began, but Gervais cut her off. "You haven't watched it, have you?" he said, his voice a mix of amusement and disdain. "You've read tweets about it, you've seen clips out of context, but you haven't actually watched it, because if you had, you'd know I never mock trans people. I mock the ridiculous extremes of the debate. There's a difference, but that requires nuance, which daytime TV doesn't do." The audience murmured, some nodding, others squirming. Hostin was already on the ropes, and Gervais was just warming up. Joy Behar jumped in, trying to bail out her co-host. "But Ricky, you have to admit some of your jokes are offensive," she said, her tone half-hearted. Gervais turned to her, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "Everything's offensive to someone. Joy, you've made jokes about Christians, Republican Southerners are those not offensive? Or is it only offensive when you disagree with a target Behar open her mouth, then close it caught at her own logic? Gervais stood up his presence, suddenly commanding the entire studio. Hey, Race, what's really happening? He said, pointing at Hostin, you discovered that outrage equals ratings, that victimhood equals virtue, that claiming offense give you power. So you made a career of it, but you're not actually offended, you're opportunistic. The accusation landed like a thunderbolt. Hostin sputtered, how dare you? But Gervais was relentless. How dare I what point out your hypocrisy? You had Harvey Weinstein on this show and toss him softball. Questions you laugh at his jokes. But a comedian calling out Hollywood's hypocrisy, that's where you draw the line. The audience was buzzing now, some pulling out phones to record the chaos. Gervais wasn't just winning, he was rewriting the rules of the game. He pulled out his phone, holding it up like a weapon. Want to see something interesting? He asked, scrolling. These are tweets from you, Sunny. Jokes about white people, men, conservatives, generalization, stereotypes, mockery. But that's not offensive, is it? Because you're on the right side. Hostin's face flushed. That's completely different, she protested. But Gervais pound say that again. He demanded, explain how your mockery is righteous. But mine is violence. Explain the difference without sounding like a hypocrite. Ill wait. The studio fell silent. The weight of his challenge crushing Hostin's. Couldn't answer not. Without exposing her double standard, she was trapped, and Gervais knew it. But he wasn't done. He pulled out a piece of paper, his voice rising with purpose. This is interesting, he said, waving. It's the View's advertising demographics. Your audience is 92% white, middle-aged, upper-middle-class women. You're performing diversity. For the least diverse audience on TV, you're selling wokeness to people who've never faced real oppression. That's not activism, love. That's theater. Whoopi sensing the car and to try to intervene. Ricky, that's not fair, she said, her voice strained. What's not fair? Whoopi grabbed his shot back, turned to her. You're a comedian. You know comedy requires risk. You know it pushes boundaries. But you sit here silently while she pointed at Hostin's, turns comedy into a thought crime. You've sold out your own art form for a paycheck. The accusation hit like a gut punch. Whoopi face betrayed a flicker of guilt. Her comedian's soul wrestling with her role as a host. Gervais turned back to Hostin's, his voice low but lethal. You want to know what really offends me? People like you using real suffering as a shield for your own agenda. Trans people face real discrimination. Disabled people face real challenges, and you use their struggles to score points on TV. That's not allyship, that's exploitation. Hostin tried to rally him, fighting for marginalized communities, she insisted. But Gervais was ready. No, you're speaking for communities that never asked you to represent them. You're a wealthy, straight, cisgender woman claiming to be the voice of the oppressed. The arrogance is breathtaking. He stepped closer, his voice cutting through the studio's artificial light. You know what comedians do? We point out absurdity. We highlight hypocrisy. We make people think by making them laugh. You know what you do? You make people afraid to think by threatening them with cancellation. Which one of us is really oppressing people? Hostin's clung to her talking points. Your words cause harm, she said, her voice trembling. Your censorship causes more harm. Gervais fire back. When you silence comedians, you don't protect people. You infantile them. You're saying they're too weak to hear jokes. That's not respect, that's condescension. Then he dropped a bombshell. You know who messaged me after my last special? He asked, pausing for effect. Trans comedians, gay comedians, disabled comedians. They understand comedy is about shared humanity, not segregated sensitivities. But you wouldn't know that because you don't actually listen to these communities. You just speak over them. The audience was split, some cheering, others visibly uncomfortable. But Gervais turned to them directly. You're being told laughter is violence, that jokes are oppression. That's not progressive, it's puritanical. The same people who claim to be liberal are enforcing conservative censorship, the horseshoe theory in action. Hostin's desperate, accuse him of oversimplifying him, clarifying. Gervais corrected. There's a difference. You complicate simple things to seem intelligent. I simplify complex things to reveal truth. That's what comedy does. It cuts through. You're drowning in it. With that, he started walking toward the exit, but not before delivering a final searing. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Subscribe for more powerful video.